All right, guys, esports orgs and late payments. Name a more iconic duo. Unfortunately, this kind of thing still happens all the time, even in 2020. If you thought the dark days of orgs failing to pay their players and staff and feeding them excuse after excuse for doing so were over, well, I got one for you. This is a story about a pretty small org that owes some pretty big money. Okay guys, before we get started with the actual story, I really want to quickly say I know we deal with a lot of negative stories here on Don't At Me, and I do think it's important to shed light on those. However, I also think it's important to celebrate what we love about esports, and to that end, we've got an award show. That's right, theScore Esports Awards is going down on YouTube Wednesday, January 15. Be there. All right, on with the story. Now, if you've never heard of an organization called Lowkey Esports, well, I can't really be that shocked. But look, even if the name doesn't ring a bell, they actually have, or had, a lot going on. They've got a PUBG team, Dragon Ball Z Fighters players, Rainbow Six team, CSGO teams. They had an Overwatch Contenders team. They had a League of Legends squad that made it to Worlds and a Rocket League team that made it to the Rocket League World Championships. So that all sounds pretty good, right? Well, hold on. According to multiple sources I have inside Lowkey Esports and documents supplied to me, this organization owes their players and staff more than $137,000 in late payments and fees. This huge chunk of money is for everything from Rainbow Six Siege player salaries in Brazil to jersey design fees in Canada. Now, according to both players and members of staff at Lowkey Esports that I talked to, this whole problem started around October of 2019. Now, prior to that, Lowkey Esports seemed to have been more or less okay with getting their payments in on time. Any delays would be measured in days or weeks at the most. But starting in fall of 2019, those delays started to be measured in months. Months of unreceived payments and broken promises to rectify the situation. For example, one of my sources provided me with various screenshots of conversations that happened between Lowkey Esports, former esports director, and various regional managers. And I have similar screenshots of similar conversations with other members of the corporate staff of Lowkey Esports as well. For example, for the head of the Canadian division of Lowkey Esports, Mira Davis, this issue is stretched back all the way to December 1st, and she says she's heard 10 to 15 different broken promises that she'll get the money that her region is owed. Each one thus far obviously has not been fulfilled. Now, Mira was only hired in November, and she submitted her first budget to the org on December 1st, which basically means she's been working for these guys for 2 months and hasn't seen a dime. But other people who have been with the org longer have been waiting longer for their payments. I also spoke to Enzo Toledo, aka Tander. He's a member of that Rocket League team that made it to Worlds for Lowkey. And he told me that he and his team haven't seen a dime in the entirety of November and December, to say nothing of January. And that includes a trip to Madrid with expenses for the RLCS Season 8 finals. This guy's team made it to Worlds. And if he's not getting paid, that's not a good sign. Then, for example, there's Joel Prado, aka Romp. He is a PUBG mobile player signed to Lowkey Esports, and he says he hasn't been paid at all since signing on with the team at the very end of October. He also confirmed to me that no other players that he's aware of have received any payment in the last several months. Oh, and if Mira, Romp, Tander, and all the other people at Lowkey actually do get paid out, it's gonna be their last paycheck from Lowkey Esports. Yeah, that's right. According to multiple sources I spoke to for this report, on January 7th, Lowkey management informed almost all the regional managers that their regions would be shutting down for good. That's every region apparently, except for the Philippines, Vietnam, and Sri Lanka. Some of those sources also provided me with screenshots of conversations that corroborate this. And that is what seems to be happening. At this point, Lowkey's website, their Twitter, their Facebook, their Instagram, it's all wiped clean from the internet. Now, no one I spoke to for this story, be they players or management, had any clear explanation for why their regions were being shut down and why there was such a huge delay in payment, beyond simply, well, we ran out of money. Also, no one I spoke to was given formal notice of their termination with any kind of letter. The screenshots of conversations I've been provided with when it comes to this issue have all been extremely vague, with language like, "we're not going to continue," or "everyone is just going to shut their doors." According to both players and management I spoke to, they were fed stories about anything from banking errors to PayPal issues to prepaid cards getting stuck in customs to cryptocurrency apps they wanted to use that didn't work. And some sources, including Victor Luiz, he's the Brazilian team manager for Lowkey Esports, even told me that they were told that part or all of the company was going bankrupt. Now that last part is interesting because I have two different sources who at this time will remain anonymous in order to protect them from reprisals, who provided me with contracts from Lowkey Esports. Now in those contracts, one of the grounds for termination was bankruptcy or insolvency of the company. Now if the company is indeed going literally bankrupt in the legal sense, then I have some questions. Like, what about the partnership with DELL that they recently announced? Why were they hiring managers, recruiting players, and opening an entire new region as late as November? How could so many regions close or go bankrupt when certain others, which presumably are part of the same company, could remain open? The public reaction from now former Lowkey employees regarding the impending closure of so many regions was not great. The same day I was told that everyone at the company was told they were being let go, for example, the regional manager for North America tweeted about backstabbing and false idols. Romp, that PUBG mobile player I talked about earlier, tweeted that it had been 2 months since he or his team had been paid and 2 months since he'd heard anything from the owners. He also used the hashtag #PayLowkey. Romp also had some pretty pointed accusations for a guy named Max. Now that's Max Wood, the former esports director for Lowkey Esports. This is the same Max you've seen in screenshots provided by my sources. The same guy who's been relaying promise after promise about repayment schedules to all of Lowkey's regional managers over the last few months. Now Max, as I said, was formerly the esports director for the org, and from what I understand, has been operating as the single point of contact between the regional managers and the people who actually own and run Lowkey Esports. Principally, this seems to be a woman named Remeline Penaflor. See, apparently the regional managers and definitely the players very rarely, if ever, interact with this person and the other owners and operators of Lowkey Esports. It's always this Max guy acting as a filter and a mouthpiece between the two parties. Now, I did speak with Max for this story, and he told me that A, he no longer works for Lowkey Esports, and B, he is continuing to act as a liaison between the people who need to get paid and the people who hopefully have the money, out of a show of good faith, because he feels somewhat guilty, somewhat responsible for what's happened. I did, of course, also reach out to the owners and the executives of the org, and one of them, Tony Look Nguyen, did respond. He's listed as the co-owner of Lowkey Community on social media, and he told me that he primarily handles marketing for the Lowkey divisions that aren't esports. As for what exactly Lowkey Community is and how it's different from Lowkey Esports, well, its official website describes it as a gaming platform, but I don't know, to me it just looks like a clothing brand. They appear to have some kind of deal with Filipino boxer Romero Duno, and there's like pictures of him hanging out with Manny Pacquiao while wearing Lowkey gear. It's all very weird. Anyways, regarding the esports side of things, he told me, quote, "All players and staff will be paid within 2 weeks. This has been communicated with everyone. The players have every right to be angry, but thankfully, we are fixing everything." End quote. Then he basically told me that everything was all good with the players and staff and that they had been informed for the reason of their delayed payments. When I asked him what that reason was, he never responded to me again. And just to reiterate at this point, guys, not a single person that I spoke to for this story was ever given any clear reason for the delayed payments or the closure. Now, there are a ton of loose ends to this story as well. Loose ends like how certain players told me they were being denied bonuses or transfer fees that they had negotiated prior to Lowkey letting them go. Loose ends like, is the sudden and rather casual termination of so many people's contracts even legal? I am looking into these issues and more, and I am consulting with lawyers about it. In the meantime, as I said earlier, we have yet another promise from Lowkey Esports corporate side that all outstanding money will be repaid within a short time frame. And pretty shortly, we'll know if it's an empty one or not. And if it is, well, you're gonna see me here again pretty soon. I hope you don't. It's KOTOR. Keith doesn't know what Knights of the Old Republic is. Who are these people?
Don't you have like a brick laptop as your home PC?
Yeah, it came out in like 2004.
Yeah, it's an old ass.
Like,
So you're just fucking
I actually don't have a brick laptop. I have like a high-end laptop. I don't have a PC, like I don't have a tower at home. I specifically bought a super thin, super small, high-end, good processor laptop because I want to be able to travel with it, do whatever I want to do. So I can play esports games on it. Like I can play like Dota, League, whatever. It can handle shitty games like that.
Is it like obviously?
I meant graphically. I didn't mean they're shitty games. I meant like graphically.